Jay, how's it going, man? Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's good to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Why don't we maybe start with a little bit of a introduction? Tell the audience who you are and what do you do?
Yeah. So my name is Jason Prowse. I'm the head instructor, chief instructor at Open Cross Fitness. And I'm a personal trainer, combat sport trainer, strength and conditioning coach. So it's primarily what I do. And our business is my own business. I run that, set that up myself.
Sweet. Sounds like you got a lot on your plate.
Oh, mate, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Yeah. It's funny because there's often a saying that an entrepreneur is somebody who work 60 hours for themselves to avoid having to work 42 hours for somebody else. So that's very much the case.
Yeah,
very much the case. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like when we met, obviously you were still working in the corporate world. So just kind of curious, I'd love to hear a bit about that transition and how you went from, a good, nice corporate job and working in that world to kind of making the switch to working for yourself and sort of following your passion. I mean, that's always an interesting story. And I think a lot of people, it's something that a lot of people consider, but don't ever actually end up pulling trigger, right? So interested to hear a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I always had the idea that I wanted to run my own business. I've had multiple business ideas over the years. So, I've had, I have an extensive experience in martial arts. So I thought there was going to be something related to that. I thought I was going to take my business experience. I'm 21 years in sales and marketing and analytics, insights and planning, that kind of stuff. I was going to use that experience to help martial arts grow and market themselves. So that's one idea, that I was going to have a martial arts equipment, import company or, a product like Rival or like Everlast or a brand like that. That's another idea. So what the trigger was, so I was working in this corporate job, I was working with yourself. And what the trigger was, my wife was diagnosed with leukemia. So I had to take some time off for compassionate leave. So for a while, I was trying to hold down the corporate job that I wasn't really happy in. And then I was trying to, get to the hospital, and I was trying to hold down the kids, and I was trying to do everything. I was trying to work out, trying to eat good, all those things, trying to manage all those things. And it was just beginning to get a little bit much. At the time when I was working in the corporation, I had a team. With one of the teams, I did a project called Find Your Why from a guy called Simon Sinek, who you might be familiar with, but might be new to your audience. So he's kind of like a business leadership guru. He came up with a thing called the Golden Circle, which talked about, companies should focus on why they do what they do and not what they do. So you can look that up on YouTube. It's a great watch. And he also has a program called Find Your Why. So I executed this with the team. And we basically takes you through a bunch of exercises to understand what is your main purpose in life and how do you apply that to the job that you do. So the idea is that you're trying to find new motivation for the job that you do in what is in your core personality, like who you are, how you were brought up, things like that. So as I was going through this with the team, I was going through it with myself as well. And what started to become clear was my why is I like to teach and coach people to improve their performance. And that's what gives me satisfaction. That's what gives me fulfillment. But I wasn't getting it in the industry, in the business I was in, because I was giving all my ideas and recommendations, and it was going up into the upper senior management, and it was going nowhere. No one was listening to it. So whether I wasn't communicating it well enough, or they didn't want to hear it, or the recommendations weren't good enough, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it wasn't happening, and that's why I felt unfulfilled. So I took a little back seat and thought, where can I take what I know, coach people, help me improve their performance? Whilst all this was going on and leading up to the point where my wife was diagnosed, I'd been coaching kickboxing at the office gym for free, just to help people out and just give them something to do, community builder. And a lot of the people there were saying, if you get a gym outside of the company, we will pay you to train us. And then a couple of people at the office were also paying me for personal training, and they insisted on paying me. And I was kind of like, I can actually get paid for this. People are willing to pay me for this. I'm good enough to get paid. So
there's kind of minimal viable product right there, right?
Precisely so, yeah. And I'm going to get a little bit I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on that minimum viable product thing in a minute as well. But basically, all these things came together at the same time, as, like the kismet or whatever you want to call it. Those things all came together. So I had a massive event going on in my life, which actually forced me to take a step away from the business. I had a massive realization on what my life's purpose was. And what was happening in the fitness side of things was people were starting to talk to me about training and personal training, paying me for it. So it really became very clear that that is something that I could do. So once my wife was going through treatment for leukemia, it's like chemotherapy and stem cell transplant. She's fine now, by the way, for those who are interested. She's doing great. She's 4 years or 4.5 years post stem cell transplant. If she reaches 5 years, she's considered cured, which is kind of rare, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're all super excited about that. So that'll be a big celebration. So I took a step away from the business. I went on compassionate leave. The business offered me like a severance package to basically just take off and just go and take care of her. So they looked after me while I was on compassionate leave with the EI. And then after that, they helped me out with the package. And that then helped me to leave the company and have a bit of financial security to then be able to look at setting up the business. So take you back to that financial, the viability thing. A former colleague of mine, a guy called Jordan Wicke, who's a fantastic entrepreneur and ultra marathon runner and just an incredible guy. I recommend you look him up, jordanwicket.com. He has an amazing blog on ultra marathon running. We talked about entrepreneurism a lot. He set up his own company and sold it for 6 figures. He once gave me a thing called a viability matrix, which is basically a spreadsheet. You just go down and you put values and weighting on the things that are important to you when setting up a company. So it'll be like, would you be happy doing this? Can you make money? What's the market look like? And is the market good for this kind of product or service? How much money do you make versus the money you're making now? Basically, is the juice worth the squeeze? And then you tot up all the numbers. You give them all weightings like 9 out of 10. You tot it all up and then add it and make an average out of it. If the average comes to 75% or more, you basically got a viable business. So mine came up to 86, and all my previous ones have never broken 70. So I was like, immediately, this makes sense. I've got no setup costs. I know what I'm doing. I've got 30 plus years of martial arts experience. I've got money in my pocket. I'm unhappy doing what I've been doing. So this makes total sense. And that's pretty much how, it all came along. It's kind of a long story, but it's all interesting steps when you look at things from a more holistic perspective and take information from your holistically from all of your life, bring it all together. It helps you make that decision to go forward.
That's awesome. That sounds like an incredible resource for anyone who's kind of going through some of that and thinking about, if they want to do it. Because I think that's a big thing in fitness. People that are into fitness and maybe they want to get into training or whatever, they do it and then they realize, oh, I actually don't like training people. I just like doing fitness as a hobby, right?
Yeah, 100%. I would say that would represent a very large portion of people who go from school into like CanFit Pro or something like that and get a PT, or they go to Good Life, they get some kind of qualification to go to Good Life for their first job. And it's just not what they think. Like, they like fitness, they like training, but they don't like helping people. Like, not they don't like helping people, but they don't. Training other people isn't what they enjoy. It's training it themselves, maybe their own sense of accomplishment or whatever it is that, floats their boat about fitness. For me, it's helping people. So it could be, it could be any kind of training. It could be like, I did some training, in my role as a manager. I would train the employees on the equipment, on the software, or I would train them in how to do a certain kind of analytics or how to put together a presentation for the board or something. So yeah, there was lots of things you can do where you kind of fulfill your passion, hit your purpose. But it's always good to find that channel where that fits. So I had it before in the sense of analytics, because I would analyze the data, which I enjoy doing. I like being on the science side, which also fits with fitness. And I like finding, the aha moment and then sharing it with somebody, turning that into a strategy and having them execute it, and then it improved their sales. So I was getting that satisfaction in that industry, but then I got to a point where I was so far up the chain, I was starting to try to influence senior management, and we were talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, not just sort of like, a million or 10 million for a brand or a product or something. Now we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars for an entire brand. and try to get that impact was becoming much harder, and it wasn't satisfying. So yeah, I think people really got to understand what is their purpose and how does that fit with what it is that they want to do. So I'd like to give you a good example. Actually, I've recently met this young lady who's working in reception at one of the gyms that I work at. And she's basically, it's just a reception job. She's just a reception job, like helping a friend out. But while she's there, she was also training somebody just helping them out, like how to do a workout program. And I looked at her and I said, like, you're one of the best trainers I've seen. Bear in mind that I work in a gym with like 30 professional, full-time, self-employed trainers. It's like, how do you've obviously like got a real talent, a real skill for it. So I was talking to her and said, like, you should really become a trainer. My friends have been telling me to become a trainer. Now you've got an actual trainer telling you become a trainer. And then she's thinking like, I don't really know if I could do it. I said, seriously, the owner of the gym said, okay, you've got Sunday morning, set up a class. I will do all the payments. I will set up the marketing, the advertising. You just deliver the course, go. And she's like, right now, Tuesdays and Thursdays every morning, she's running a women's only beginners training course. So from like within 2 months of coming to the gym, having somebody stop her and say, you've got talent, go ahead and do it. And she absolutely loves it. It really fits in with her passion and her why. She loves bringing joy. She loves helping people work out. She loves helping people discover working out. So that's why she's focusing on you and on people who are working out for the first time, learning about working out. And it just really, really fits. So when it fits you, that's when when it fits your purpose, that's when it's going to be good. But you have to know what your purpose is first, which is why I talk about Simon Sinek and the whole find your why process. The process of finding out your purpose is critical. Once you got that, everything else will fall into place.
For sure. And I mean, you got to listen to what the universe is telling you sometimes, right? Like some of that feedback that you're getting, like even for yourself, right? Hearing people say like, I would pay for this, right?
Yeah.
Listen to that feedback that you're getting from your network, from your peers, and use that, right? Another one that stands out to me, similar to fitness, is like people that go to culinary school and realize, I love cooking. I don't want to work in a restaurant because the hours are shit and it's an absolute
100%.
grind, and it made me hate cooking, right? Like how many people do you know? I feel like I know several people that have gone through.
Another one right here.
Oh, that's you. Okay.
Right, that was me. I had the application as we were talking, like 30 plus years ago. I was like 16 years old, ready to come out of school. I was like, do I go in the army, which was pretty much my dominant choice? Do I go to the equivalent of high school and get my grades and then go to university, or do I? Which I wasn't very good at school, like at all. I pretty much failed everything. In England, we take exams at 16, and you have to pass those to go to high school, and then you have to pass those to go to university. So I was failing everything left, right, center. I was good in the army, but not much else. And I thought, I could just go to catering college. I loved cooking. I always loved cooking. And I was like, exactly what you just said. It was like, the hours are shit. And if I'm cooking for somebody else, I'm not really I'm not getting the passion of it, because I love cooking it, tasting it, and sharing it with people. If I'm not there sharing it, then it's not going to be for me. And I'm 100% know that I made the right choice. 100%.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's awesome. So like, was there sort of like when you were kind of taking that leap and you finally got to the point of no return, I guess, was there kind of a interesting story or feeling that you noticed, or did you just never even think about going back? Like, because I think every entrepreneur sort of gets to a point where they have to take the step off the cliff, right? And kind of figure things out on the way down a little bit, right? Because you're never going to be 100% ready. All right. At some point, you have to take somewhat of a leap of faith. Maybe like you do enough work where it's like, the chasm is a little bit not as big, right? Ideally, at least you have some things kind of set in place. And like you said, some of the research and processes you had in place that this is actually viable. But, maybe talk a little bit about that moment for you.
Yeah, there's a couple of things on that. So firstly, I would say for anybody considering going into fitness as a business, it's self-employed. A little backstory. I used to have a coach, a boxing coach, who's also a fantastic Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach called Rory McDonald, who's a former professional MMA fighter. He actually has a painting tattooed on his shoulder of burning boats. Because there's a whole story about some Spanish invader in South America. And they went to South America and they said, we have to conquer this area in order to secure it for the Spanish government or whatever. You guys can't go home until we do that. So the way they ensured that is that he set fire to the boats that they sailed there in. So they would have to like conquer that area and in order to get resources, in order to build new boats, in order to sail back home. So if those guys wanted to go home, they had to win that. So that gave rise to the term "burn your boats." If you haven't heard that term before, yeah. I would recommend. I hear people talk about it all the time, and I've listened to a whole bunch of entrepreneurial, podcasts and audio books and things like that. You hear it all the time. People saying, "I want to do my side gig till I make enough money that I can transition to a full-time job." I will tell you this: it will not happen. For the most part, maybe I don't know what the number is, but it's going to be like 90% of people. You will not make enough money if you don't give 100%. To that effort. So Rory always inspired me to burn my boats. And very much that's what I went for. I said, like, I've left that job. I have a little bit of money in the bank. I have to make this work and I know it's going to make me happy. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not taking another part-time job in order to secure a bit of money while I do this. I have to give this everything. I can give it 100% attention. And this is going to sound so funny, but one of my inspirations for that, I have a saying that comes from a very odd source. I say, I bet on me. So I put 100% of my money on me. And it comes from Hulk Hogan, of all people. Hulk Hogan, oh my God. But anyway, as much as a character he is, so I happened to like, I don't know the exact details of the story, but basically he got divorced from his wife. And his wife had this option to fight in court and try and get 50% of whatever, where you could just give all of what you had to her and then call it a day. So otherwise he'd have to give 50% of whatever he had for the rest of his life. I forget the details. But the point was he just let her have everything because he said, I can rebuild my fortune. I will bet on me. So but if I have to share everything with her for the rest, I'm going to be cut in two ways. So it's really, burn the boats, give yourself everything and bet on yourself to be successful, and you'll be successful. But if you kind of divide your attention, the man who chases two rabbits catches neither, right? So you've got to give what you're doing 100%. So there is that. So those are the sort of like the background things about taking the leap and jumping the chasm and all that kind of stuff. Yes, you can narrow the chasm by having a bit of money in the bank, or giving yourself a timeline to be successful in, or giving yourself the tools. Learning about business accounting and business planning and things like that definitely help. But really, you've got to say, no, this is what I do, and this is how I'm going to make money. And not having money gives you the fear. If there's any fans out there, having the fear, quitting your job and having the fear of having no job that helps you go out and get another job. So for sure, you can't divide your attention that way. Yeah, you have to go 100%. So in terms of your other question, like, was there any kind of feeling or anything? The story I always tell is I was probably 3 or 4 months into being a full-time trainer. My schedule was almost full. I had enough clients going on. I had enough money coming in. The gym that I was at really helped me out in terms of acquiring new clients, and they subcontracted me for some of their own clients. So things were going really well. And I had this real panic moment where I thought, I'm not working hard enough. Like, I've got this business, I'm not working hard enough. And then I sat back and I thought, well, I've worked 8 hours a day for the last 4 days. I've got a 6-hour day coming up. I got my weekends free. I've got enough money to pay my mortgage and my bills. How am I not working hard enough? And what it was is that I love what I do. So it didn't feel like work. So then I had that kind of panic that I wasn't working. I realized, no, I'm not. I don't feel like I'm working because I'm not hating what I'm doing like I did in my old job, where I was working like mad hours, staying in the office until 2 o'clock in the morning, writing reports for China or something. There was like, no, I was loving what I was doing, so it didn't feel like work. So there I felt like I wasn't working hard enough. Actually, I was, and the business was going okay. So it's good to have those little measures. That is a feeling you're going to go through for sure. Like, if you're doing what you love, it's not going to feel like work, but that is actually a panicky moment sometimes, as well as a nice moment, a nice feeling.
Yeah, interesting. And I mean, I think too, like, when you are doing what you love, you can get more done in a shorter amount of time, right? Versus
100%.
like when you're working for a corporate job, maybe that you're just not super invested in or whatnot. It's like you kind of feel like you have to be there from whatever 9 to 5, just kind of sitting around. But how much of that time are you actually putting in real dedicated effort, right? So you can do maybe 3 or 4 hours of work in a day on your business. Like obviously if you're physically training clients, that's a different thing. The time is there, but in terms of working, on the business and the promotion and the marketing and whatnot, you can get a lot done in a short amount of time because time just flies when you're actually enjoying what you're doing, right?
100%. Yeah. And it's like, it's so funny. One podcast I used to listen to is James Wedmore, Mind Your Business, which is very much kind of like an attitudes and manifesting and an alternative sort of like approach to running a business as being an entrepreneur. He's very much into, the crystals and what he calls woo-woo stuff. But one of the things he said, like the time will fit what you want it to be if you're loving doing what you're doing. And his example was he was late for a meeting one time. He had to get to an airport and fly off to a meeting, and he was late. And it was like, it's LA traffic. So there's no way he's going to get through LA traffic. No way he's going to make the airport. No way he's going to make his flight and miss his meeting. But he said, no, I'm like manifesting it. I'm saying like, I'm going to make that, even though sort of like physically it didn't seem possible. And he made the flight. And that's the story he always tells. And I could give you like 100 examples of that when that happens. It happens all the time. So it's just these little things. You make time, you find time to manage the business. Although one thing I would say for any sort of like prospective entrepreneurs, one of the biggest things you can do to help yourself out, and it seems scary at the beginning, is outsource. So like the first thing you want to do is get an accountant, 100% get an accountant first thing. Don't try and do your books by yourself. Learn from experience. I actually, having been a former business manager, I know how to look at P&Ls. I know how to look at my, my forecasts. I understand what my, outgoings are and all that kind of stuff. I can look at the business and understand it. But bookkeeping is a whole different animal, and it's a massive time suck. And there are people out there, professionals, who are willing to do it.
Just because you understand it doesn't mean you're actually going to remember to do it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Or find time to do it.
Yeah.
Or like even want to do it. And it takes the joy away from the business, doing that kind of stuff. Because I hate that stuff. I absolutely hate it. Yeah. I hate tax. I hate, like, I know I like paying it, I like benefit tax, but like calculating it and all that kind of stuff seems like a massive burden. And there are people out there who are so much better at it than me. So yeah, people come to me because I know more about physical training, fitness and combat sport than they do. So they pay me to teach them. So why don't I pay an accountant to do that side of things? And then you can do the same thing. The next thing I would say to outsource is a personal assistant. So I use a company out in Scandinavia. And then I'm thinking about, there's one in the Philippines that I'm thinking of using as well, because they're a little bit cheaper. And they have a broader selection of services. But I basically, when I have certain things that I need doing and I can't because I'm in the gym for 8 hours, I want to come home and work another 4 hours at home and miss the kids and whatever. So what I'll do is I'll just send out a list of tasks out to the PA, out to the executive assistant. They bang it out and they just send you a little list back saying, okay, there's many tasks and take this long. It's $15 or whatever it is. And then, it just gets taken care of and you don't have to worry about it. And it's great. You start to get an idea about what tasks they can do, what tasks they can't. It's very simple. Like I build workouts in I have a third-party app that I have branded for Hook and Cross, my company. And I have a third-party app that uses my branding, and I build my workouts. I manage my schedule in it. That's all third-party. You can download it for iPhone and Android. It's great. And that's all built by somebody else. So that's an outsource. So I don't have to use paper, and I don't have to create a form, and I don't have to find out how I can build out workout planning in Excel spreadsheet or whatever. So I just use that third-party company. But now I use executive assistant online to fill out the workouts in the app. It's not like I'm not even touching it. I basically have a approximate way of writing plans for certain goals, and they change based on certain people's like their weights and their strengths. So I provide that information to the EA, and they just fill it into the app, the third-party app, and then the client on the other end opens up the app, and the workout's written for them, and they're good to go. And I've spent no time doing that. I've got 10 minutes to write the email, and that gives me another hour to work in the gym to earn money, directly from training a client, doing what I love.
Yeah, focus on your strengths and focus on the things that are actually moving the needle for your business, right? Not all the nickel and diming type stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big lesson. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just kind of wanted to go back, touch on quickly about, you mentioned time, right? And kind of like time is kind of what you make it. I think that's something I've really been noticing over the years is time is so relative. Like it's so different for different people. And it seems like everyone says they're busy, right? And I see people, in life, especially I notice this a lot with older people who are retired, right? It's like you're retired, you have all the time in the world now, you don't have a full-time job, but all of a sudden you're even more busy than when you had a job. It's like I have these appointments and the grocery store, and I have to go to the doctors, and I have this, that, and it's like you just make yourself busy, and you just find ways to fill your time. But even though
100%.
the other person, someone who like myself, right, who's working full time, doing some content creation, have a kid now, like I see like even in myself, right? Like a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm busy. I'm looking back, I'm like, what the hell was I doing with all this time? Like, well, what did I do with all that free time? Like that, I was not busy. I'm way busier now, but I felt busy back then too. It's just, it's crazy how relative it is.
I think there's also a lot of people don't realize this, but and I learned this from being a manager as well as being an entrepreneur, but there's a difference between being busy and being productive. So if you're busy, you can fill your time with all sorts of tasks and nonsense stuff. Like for me, it's emails. Email is the biggest suck in the world. I get like, if you look at my inbox, there's 1,300 unread emails in there because I get a lot of sort of things from medical journals and stuff, just newsletters and whatever.
Sure, me too.
I'd love to read all of them. I'd love to find out what's going on, but I'm just choosing not to because there are better things to spend my time on, so I can make me more productive in terms of running the business. But I could easily go down the rabbit hole and read emails. That takes me to a website. I see something on the website, and I'll follow that. That takes me to a different website. Before you know it, 30 minutes is gone, and I've actually achieved nothing. Yeah. So there's a big difference between being busy and being productive. One antidote to that, again, coming from my management experience, which I've brought over with me to my trainer experience, is schedule in your tasks. So what gets scheduled gets done. So, for instance, like this podcast, coming on this podcast has been scheduled in. It's like it's in my diary, it's in my calendar to do it. Not only because obviously I want to respect you, make sure I can show up and be here and all the rest of it, but also because I want to make sure that's on my sense of productivity, that's what's getting done. But then also writing a client's program that I want to do. That's actually in my calendar as an appointment that I've made for myself. Editing my YouTube videos, that's in there as well. So things like that. Yeah, I also have a YouTube channel, Open Cross Fitness.
Nice.
Check it out. Yeah. So that's all boxing and fitness content, things like that. So you think about it,
that's a big
time blocking. Yeah. So there's a lot of things you can do in order to manage your time. Scheduling is a big one of them, and also item prioritization is key as well. I tend to write out all my tasks, and I'll pick out the top 3. And those are my must-dos for the day. Then I'll have like another 2 on top of that, which is sort of the nice-to-haves. They're equally as important, but I'll probably not get to those that day. But if it is, that's considered like an ultra-productive day. And the rest of the tasks is just stuff that I need to hit off whenever I can. The things that fall to the bottom of the list, I can tell you, they're probably never going to get done. Like they're never going to get done. They'll just keep rolling over and rolling over and rolling over. And at some point, you have to kind of like, a little bit mercenary with yourself and just cut them off the list and say, just be honest with yourself. You're never going to do that because there are other priorities that you have to take care of. And that's when it comes to running a business. So especially as a trainer or any job where you're selling time, you've got to have that prioritization process. My closest friend from UK, my best friend, runs a law firm, multi-million dollars, currently in the Maldives on a 3-week vacation, riding jet skis and landing on sandbanks and shark fishing and scuba diving, whatever it is. He's just bought his dream car, RS5 or whatever it is, which is faster than his Ferrari and his Mustang, limited edition of the other 6 cars that he's got, whatever. So, and he's the same way. Well, I went to visit him in Dubai because that's where he lives now. And first thing in the morning goes downstairs, 4:00 in the morning. We just got back from the nightclub at 2. Doesn't matter. 4:00 in the morning, he's on his patio with his espresso and his notebook. He's writing all the stuff out and he's crossing stuff out. And he's saying, like, this is what I got to do, this is what I got to do. I'll pass this off to this person. His schedule is in his head. He doesn't write anything down. He knows what he's going to do that day because he took 30 minutes in the morning at 4:00, drinking his espresso. He goes back to bed, has another sleep, wakes up 45 minutes later when the caffeine kicks in. Off he goes. That's his day. And that's what it takes to run a successful business. So, that prioritization and that planning is critical. Without that, you're just blowing in the wind.
Yeah, that's something I need to work on for myself, getting a little bit better, especially like I do time blocking and stuff and whatnot, but sort of like having that morning huddle for yourself, right? And just like planning out your day, I think is so important, because it's so easy to go off task and chase different things. And just in general too, I find like that's always been one of my weaknesses, is just like having a real singularity of focus, just because I'm such a curious person. I go down rabbit holes and find myself researching the most random shit, and it never goes anywhere. I never actually do anything with it. Just because I find so many different things interesting. And I feel like if I can ever just focus on one really specific thing, I'll be unstoppable. Because you see like some of the most successful people in the world, they're just like, no, I've been focused on this one thing since I was like 12 years old, right? Like, for example, like I was watching an interview with Mr. Beast, right? The YouTuber, biggest YouTuber in the world, right? And he's talking about sort of in high school, how he was just like barely getting by and whatever, and like didn't do anything with friends. He's like, all I ever cared about was just making the best YouTube videos. And it's just all he's cared about since he was like 10 years old.
And everyone's like, you're an overnight success. Like, no, I'm not. I'm doing it for 10 years. You just didn't see him until the last 2 years. Because only the last 2 years, he went from like, 5 million viewers to 50 million viewers and the subscribers, or whatever you want to call it. And it's because that first sort of 8 years that you didn't see him, he was honing his craft. He was learning what makes a good video, what doesn't make a good video, what's going to be editing, and he's building up relationships and networks with people in the industry. He's finding ways of not doing things as well as much as he's finding ways of doing things. It's like the whole light bulb thing. I didn't fail making a light bulb 1,000 times. I was successfully finding how not to make a light bulb, 999 times. So it's like that. It's very much like that kind of thing. And I would say the same thing when people talk to me. They're like, how do you know all this stuff? How do I know this stuff about the combat sport? It's like, well, I've been doing it since I was 5 years old. It just hasn't been, my job for that long. So really, I've only been a trainer for 4 years, but I have the experience of 38 years of training, even longer than that. I think. So 38 years. Yeah, I first put on my first judo gi at 5 years old and started slamming people into the canvas. That long ago, so I had that much experience and all that time. Interesting. Take it back to something you just said, like, you'll go down a rabbit hole and you read something and you won't use it. It doesn't go anywhere. I'll tell you this, it doesn't go anywhere right then, but it's very likely that it's going to pop up again in the future. So I'm always quoting studies, and I'm always quoting books, and I'm always quoting podcasts and things like this. I've read it and listened to it at the time. Didn't mean anything then, didn't use it straight away. And then it's come up maybe like 2-3 years later, because it all helps to inform your opinion and your knowledge base. So it's like, it's not necessarily wasted time.
Yeah, but even some random stuff. Like I got really into like axe throwing for a little while, and I just got obsessed with axe throwing. And like, I don't know if that's going to actually ever benefit me in my life. Maybe it will. Maybe
the apocalypse, man. Survive the guy to go to. With the zombie apocalypse, I'm coming to your house. That's for sure.
Totally. No, that's fine.
I'm the same with all the traditional Chinese martial arts training. It's all like spears and swords and stuff like that. And really, in the modern day context, the spear is just, and the swords and the old weapons are not only are we keeping that knowledge alive, but we're also like, it's a different way of weight training. Like I think you do Indian club training, right? Or mace.
I do the mace training.
Yeah, you do mace training, right? Indian club training is the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even kettlebells to a certain degree. Those keeping anything can be an exercise. So I got rid of it, but just this, I'm in my sort of garage studio right now, my workout studio. I had a 5 liter or gallon, 2 gallon, whatever it is, bottle of Tide, the laundry detergent. And once it was empty, I filled it out with water, and I used that as a kettlebell. Because like during the pandemic, you couldn't get home fitness equipment for love nor money. So what I did was just fill that up. It's got a handle. It's big. It's heavy. A liter of water is 1 kilo. So that's obviously metric is based on water. So 1 liter of water is a kilo. So you've got like 5 liters. That's 5 kilos. What's that? 12 pounds, something like that. That's a good kettlebell right there. So I would do online at-home workouts using a Tide laundry detergent jug. It's like anything can be fitness equipment.
Yeah, see, I've been following this guy on Instagram. He trains with he has these just big ass swords. They're like these like cartoonish martial arts, like anime looking swords.
Right.
He's just swinging around, sort of like in a similar style to the clubs or the maces, but it's just like kind of so crazy looking. I'll send it to you after this. But No,
popular on
absolutely.
Instagram the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning of the pandemic, like that was the best time for me. I was like, I've had my home gym equipment for the last 5 years. This is fantastic.
Right.
I didn't have to miss a beat, right?
Yeah, and interesting, like watching your transition, in your fitness journey. It's like I obviously, for having worked with you and seeing and following your social when we work together, seeing you work out. I've seen how you've developed, and it really in that like in the last sort of like 2-3 years since like during pandemic and post pandemic, you're really coming into your physical fitness, and you're really starting to work out the ways that make sense. Your physique is transformed significantly. And you can really see that coming through. And that's just that dedication, that consistency, and using the equipment that you've got and understanding how better to use your time. I don't know, maybe you can talk about like how much having the babies like help focus your time, especially people tend to focus a lot more on fitness when they have kids. So they say like, oh, I want to be around for my kids, so I want to stay fit and healthy. So that can be a motivator. Plus, I just want to be able to keep up with the little terrors because they're all over. So I've got two myself. So
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for me, like one of the biggest changes I think when having a kid is you just like it just when you don't have that free time anymore, you just value your time so much more.
100%.
That was one of the biggest things for me. So even when I had all the time in the world, before having a kid and during the pandemic or whatnot, I was just wasting so much time looking back on it. I kind of liken it to sort of like when you have a project at work, if you give yourself a month to do it, or you give yourself a couple of days to do it, you're going to do it in the same amount of time, probably, right? Yeah. So that was kind of like me totally for when having a kid. I'm like, now I have no time, so it's like I just felt like I was under the pressure that I needed to actually get a little bit more strict. Like I've been training for a long time. I always train, but it was more about like really dialing in the diet and the sleep, sort of like no more just like wasting time watching YouTube videos until 2:00 in the morning. Now it's like, as soon as I get a chance to sleep, I'm going to sleep because I know how valuable it is. And I know how precious of a resource it is after you have kids. Right. So there's no more wasting time on that. Right.
Yeah.
That was,
I think there's another element to that as well. When you're having kids and managing your fitness, and your nutrition is also setting an example. So like, one of my kids is an elite gymnast. The other one's like a performance dancer, like hip hop style. I mean, even though that's not akin to what I do, it's not combat sport as much as I'd love for them to go into that. But they found their own group. But I really feel their mom's also, playing at an elite level touch football athlete as well, which is how we met, playing flag football at the world level. So they've had that example their whole lives. And I think setting an example for your kids is really important, and taking that back to the buddy of mine who runs the law firm. He's the same. Like he's gone through, when he set up the company, he was under a lot of stress, he wasn't sleeping a lot. He got pretty heavy. He saw himself in a TV interview and he was horrified by how leaked, and then or took a photo or something like that. And then he decided to really take ownership of his fitness. And now he makes sure he works out in front of his kids. And slowly but surely, you can see them start now. They've taken up jiu-jitsu like he does. They've done some boxing classes. I don't think they're stuck with that, but they're definitely sticking with the jiu-jitsu. They're doing swimming. They're working out. They even jump on the treadmill when he's working on his laptop in the garden. And the treadmill's in the back. The kids are on the treadmill. You can see it at the social. I can see it when I'm calling them on FaceTime or whatever. So setting that example is so critical. But we think we're doing it for ourselves, and we're long-term doing it for them so we can be around. Really, what we're doing is teaching them good habits.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's more just, I think it's showing them that it's important to do hard things and to challenge yourself at something physically.
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of people don't grow up with that. And then it's really hard for them as an adult to find ways to fit that into their life if they didn't kind of grow up around that sort of behavior. Right.
Yeah. I think on that point, like from society as well, there's a lot of reasons for kids these days to not believe that hard work is the solution to everything, to getting what you want. And it really is. There really are no shortcuts in anything, Right. I've failed at a lot of things and had to succeed, and the only things I've really succeeded are the things that required a lot of effort and a consistent effort at that. But like you've got electronic devices that do things for you. You've got equipment in the home which does things for you, like the washing machine and things like that. My kids didn't even know that there was a hand washing detergent that you can buy from the store so you can wash things by hand. They weren't even aware that that was a thing. It's stuff like that. Your microwave can cook, or the air fryer can cook all your food for you, and you can order the food already prepared and chopped up and with an ingredients list and the rest of it. Like, you don't actually have to go to the store. Like, we're growing vegetables and fruit out in the back garden. Actually, just my daughter the other day was like, "Oh, I feel like strawberries for breakfast." It's like, they're in the garden. Go get them. Like, what? You're like, go and pick them. Yeah, you don't have to use the ones you get from the store. Go into the garden. They're right there growing. And this, you have strawberries for breakfast, fresh, literally right off the plant. So a lot of things in life, and social media is an influence. Movies, I think, are a big influence on that. You see like training montages and things like that. People, in the movie, you see them, they're skinny and weak, and then they're 5-minute training montage, and then suddenly they're, killing bad guys left, right, and center.
Every 80s movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that seems to add, or they found a magic widget which helps them transform into something, right? They were magically picked out of a group of whatever by some mystical person given a widget, and that helps them get powers instantly, and all of a sudden they're a superhero. It's like, yeah, stuff doesn't work that way. So you've got to put them through a certain degree of hardship in order for them to understand that the only way to actually achieve those things is to go through hard work. And I think things like any kind of sport or activity that has to keep you consistent is the same way. Like, we kept my eldest daughter in piano for the longest time, long after she was kind of feeling like she wasn't really into it, just to teach her to stay at something and see that she improves. And she actually started to like it a lot more towards the end. And then she ended up leaving, not because she didn't like it anymore or that she wasn't getting good. There was other reasons for her wanting to leave. But she actually stuck with it, and she started to enjoy it more because she started to see the fruits of her labor. When you start to see the fruits of your labor, that's when you really get into something.
And that's not getting any easier anytime soon with AI getting better and better, right? Like, it's going to be even more important. And there's a good book. I think it's called The Comfort Crisis. I haven't actually read the full book, but just kind of seen bits and pieces of it through podcasts and YouTube videos and whatnot. But just kind of talking about how we've made the world so comfortable now that it's naturally killing us, right? Like, we never get cold, we never get hot, we never get hungry, we never have to work super hard physically at something. And that we're just not designed to be like that evolutionary, right? We're designed to withstand, those hard times and do hard things. And if you don't, so now we actually have to build those hard things into our life, like through cold exposure, sauna, training, like doing some intermittent fasting once in a while, like do things that are challenging because that's what we're made to do.
Yeah, I'm fasting right now. Was it like 5 o'clock and I haven't eaten yet? So like, yeah, it's like, you just got to add that thing in. I once did a thing called the apple diet, where you eat nothing but apples. So when you're hungry, you eat an apple and you do it for 5 days. And they're supposed to have all this various like effect on your body. I didn't really do it for the various effects on the body. I mean, a bit of weight loss would be nice. Malic acid helps sort of break down certain things in the body. So it's nice to have an abundance of that. But really, it was just a discipline. It was just a discipline. I'll tell you,
more of a mental thing than anything, right?
Yeah. When I was on the apple diet, like I don't recommend it. It's not, from a nutrition advisor perspective, don't do it. Don't do it to lose weight or anything like that. It's good for a discipline. Just only eating apples, saying no to everything. Remember, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, right? So, and vice versa. When you say no to something, you're saying yes, to other things. So, when they say yes to that, to that piece of cake instead of the apple diet, you're saying no to, the benefits of the apple diet or the weight loss, or, you're saying yes to a headache later from a sugar crash, and say yes to another cup of coffee or something like that. So you always got to be aware of that. You've got to introduce that discipline into your life a little bit. And I incorporate that in my training as well. So I run a boxing class at Elevation Martial Arts Training Center. I'm the head boxing coach there. And I actually introduce training that is designed to put the students under mental duress, where I'm going to take them way past their physical capability, and I'm going to ask them to keep going. So the reason we do that is not just to be a jackass, although that's kind of enjoyable from a sadistic point of view. All trainers like to be like that, but it's really just to teach them how to learn to overcome the physical duress. They're punching the bag and they've still got 30 seconds left, and they literally can't lift their arm up anymore. When you're in a fight and you're competing in boxing, the fight is only finished when they knock you out or the bell rings. Well, you can give up if you want, but that's really the only two ways that the fight wins. So if you can't keep your hands up, the other guy's going to knock you out and win. So when you say like no to keeping your hands up, you're saying yes to letting the other guy win. So you got to learn to find that mental fortitude in yourself. You're tired, you're exhausted, and somehow you still got to, not only do you have to like compete athletically, but you also have to like not get knocked out. Hey, it's don't get, you're going to get physically hurt in combat sport if you can't maintain that focus. And it's the same in life, right? If you can't maintain the focus on looking at revenue from your business, then you're not going to get revenue, and then you're not going to have a business. You don't understand how to measure your profits. You don't understand how to time block and be productive in the time that you have. You're not going to have a business. It's going to go away. Right? If you don't pay your taxes, you're going to get taxed for it. No, you have to have that discipline to do the things you don't want to do. Like Mike Tyson, famous heavyweight boxer, Hall of Famer, said, discipline is doing what you hate, but doing it like you love it. And we have to introduce that to our life, because it's a muscle. It's you have to practice it. You have to learn it. It doesn't come batteries included.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's about like choosing the hard stuff, like doing it on your terms, because if you don't, hard stuff is going to find you in life either way, right? Like if you're not disciplined with your finances, guess what? You're going to get broke, and then you're going to have to deal with it then, right?
Anyways, this is an interesting real life severe example of that. So my wife's in the hospital bed. She's, just been diagnosed with leukemia, and she's, she go through the chemotherapy and all that kind of stuff. And she said, like, I'm sorry you're having to go through that to me. She's saying it to me. She's sorry that I have to go through it. She's having to actually, I'm looking at the kids and looking after the kids and managing money and doing all the rest of it while she's there getting treated, and obviously all the emotional distress of, of seeing your loved one in that kind of condition and feeling sort of like to a degree helpless. Because you're not a doctor, you're not actually not directly helping with the treatment kind of thing. Though you're doing everything in the periphery. The thing that I said to her was, I'm glad it's me here doing this, because I'm built for this. So I've had 2 jobs where I've been like massively under pressure, incredible pressure at jobs and things like that. I'm ex-forces, so I've had pressure from that. I've been in martial arts and training. I've had the pressure from that, and the physical the physical difficulty of that. So I am built for this kind of stress, and I'm so glad it's me sitting next to you and not somebody else who's not built, not ready for this kind of stress. And I can manage it. I can take it. I can do it. We're going to beat this cancer. And here we are 4 years later, or 4.5 years later. And she's like, we're just on the cusp of the wood. She's just on the cusp of being declared cured. I'm not saying that's anything to do with me, but just saying like all those other things that are happening in the periphery, I was built for that. I was built for that, and I was happy that I was. And I was happy I went through the hardship that I did in the past to be able to know that when that came along, I can handle it.
Exactly. All that stuff, it adds up, and when hard stuff in life finds you, you're ready for it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about training then. Get into some more specifics. So, are you focused more on sort of general population people? Are you focused more on athletes? Kind of balancing the two. How do you approach that?
Yeah. So again, this is like when you're choosing the business, how do you run the business? Yeah. How do you make it viable? So the general population, that's where the money is. So I actually have, because of my marketing background, I have what I call a client avatar. So I train predominantly females from 26 to 45 years old, usually with kids, usually professionals. I target to like people like directors and VPs and people like that. Partly because they have the discipline to do it, partly because they have the revenue, the cash flow to be able to pay for personal training. They need the time. They need to use their time wisely. So when they are training out, they just want to go to the gym, do random stuff. They want somebody to tell them exactly what to do so they can get the results that they want. It tends to be the female demographic. I don't know. The females that I tend to work with tend to be a little bit more disciplined, but I don't know. That may be just because I'm attracting that kind of client. It's not something I sort of went out to get, and I don't think it applies to all females necessarily, but that's definitely something that's come through. And then I target those people. That's where the money comes from. In addition to that, gen pop, which I love training. I love my clients. I don't have a client I don't always look forward to going to train, and they're all wildly different. I was training a guy this morning who's like 6'4", 290 pounds, 280 pounds maybe, and a music producer. I'm a professional guy, and I'm training him in his condo gym, and he hasn't really worked out for his entire life. He's in his 60s, And then I trained a girl just after who's about 31, 32. She got a kid. She runs 3 businesses in 3 different languages, in Chinese, Japanese, and Korea, and right here in Canada. She's originally from China. She came over as a big immigrant. Now she runs these 3 businesses, and I train her as well. And she's just phenomenal on the kickboxing side of things. And it's just, she never knew that about herself. So like, we've called her Angry. Because like, it's her fight nickname, because like when she hits that tag, it's like, all the tension she feels for those business stresses, she comes out. So that's like the Gen Pop side of things. I love training them, but I also have elite amateur kickboxers and elite amateur boxers. So these are guys who are probably going to go pro. They're competing at the higher levels. They're at the sort of Golden Gloves level, or they're at the national champion level on kickboxing. 2 of them for sure, the kickboxing guys are going to go pro, and I'm 100% sure I'm going to see one of them in the UFC. It's like, I feel really good about it. And I want to be there to take him all the way. I've got an elite boxer. I want to take him all the way. I've got a professional MMA fighter. I've got professional boxers that I train in strength and conditioning, not in boxing, but in strength and conditioning to help them. So because I have that background in martial arts, I have that understanding science of the training. I can put those 2 things together. They don't know the training side, but they know the fighting side. And I know the fighting side and the training side, and bring it together. So I'm kind of split into 2 camps right now. My goal is to move entirely to the professional and elite amateur side, and maybe maintain a couple of Gen Pop clients, and then I want to farm off those Gen Pop clients to my junior trainers. So I have one existing junior trainer and then another junior trainer coming on. So to farm out that extra work, and then eventually, hopefully, I'm gonna have like a whole sort of casted, like subcontracted. I'm choosing to subcontract.
Scaling up, right?
Yeah, I'm scaling up. Yeah, I'm choosing to subcontract my trainers, not employ them, because I want them to go through what I've gone through and run their own business. And I'm just giving them extra businesses a leg up to help them get started. The same way the guy who ran the gym that I train out of gave me a leg up at the beginning. So he's maybe not quite 10 years older than me, and he's been in the industry for like 20 plus years, and he gave me a good leg up, and I want to provide that for other people as well. So like paying it forward, paying it back, however you want to say that, helping the next generation come through.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not really, my goal is all professional or all competitive athletes. Realistically, the Gen Pop pays the bills, and that's where I spend like 90% of my time. 100% of my marketing goes to them. But all of the professional and competitive athletes, that's all networking. Again, your network is your net worth.
Yeah,
a good way of putting it that way. So the more you can network, the more time you spend around people like that, the more chance you have attracting those kind of people into your life. So I'm very, very grateful to have the athletes that I have, and the athletes I have had in the past as well. So,
are there any big differences kind of in how you approach? Like obviously, like the intensity and the commitment and whatnot is kind of given between a professional and sort of Gen Pop, but do you do a lot of sort of that like more functional kind of training with your Gen Pop clients as well, or do you kind of tailor it towards like their specific goals a little bit more? Like what are your kind of approaches to kind of juggling those 2?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll tell you one thing, and this relates to things we were talking about earlier. A lot of the times when I get a Gen Pop client coming in to talk to me, they're like, well, I want to get stronger, and I want to do kickboxing because I don't like normal cardio, which is the normal thing I get. And I want to get stronger, and I want to get more tone. What they're really saying is they want to lose weight, but they don't want to kind of admit that they want to lose weight. They want all these things, but the thing they want the most is losing weight. So almost always I'm giving them a nutrition plan. I tend not to do that with the athletes unless it's the elite amateurs. I'll tend to give them nutrition, and it's nutrition advice rather than nutrition plan. I don't tell them what to eat meal by meal, but I give them direction on how to choose how much of what they're going to have, how much of what they're going to eat. But my personal Gen Pop clients, I go a little bit more into the nutrition because that's really going to give them what they want to do, what they want to get. On the training side of thing, I actually train my Gen Pop with the same training I use for my pros because that's my market. So I get fit like a fighter by training like one is on my website. So that's what people come to me for, because they want to, like, if you look at pro fighters, they're generally all shredded. They all look fantastic. They're all great athletes, and they've all trained to get that way. Especially MMA guys tend not to be naturally good athletes in the beginning of their career, and they have to develop that. So I tend to do the same kind of training. I just do, the volume is different and the intensity is different.
Yeah.
So I've got my professional guys that have like 3 hours of training, which includes their martial arts training. and they'll have like a road work, then they'll have S&C, and then they'll have training, or they'll have road work, then they have sparring, and then they have like bag work or something like that. And we'll break it up that way. Whereas a Gen Pop, I'll give them a day. I can give them a workout where they've got workouts to do every day, but it's not nearly the same kind of intensity. And it's just one workout per day. Sometimes it's two, but it depends on the goal. If they're really aggressive on their weight loss, it'll be two, and what fits their lifestyle. Because that's the most successful plan, is the one that fits your lifestyle. Same thing with nutrition.
Yeah.
You can try keto, you can try the apple diet, you can try whatever plan you want to do. But if you can't stick to it, it's not going to work. So the best plan is always the one that fits your lifestyle. So that's the only real tinkering I do, is it fit in with what it is they want to do. More likely, how does it fit with their lifestyle?
Yeah. No, for sure. That makes sense. And like you said, like, train like a fighter, right? Like, I think most people, they actually do want to look more like an athlete, like a fighter, right? They want an athletic build. They don't want to look like a bodybuilder, but they're training like an old school bodybuilder,
Right.
because that old school bodybuilding fitness is kind of, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of like what made fitness really popular, kind of like in the 80s and 90s, like the old school Muscle Beach kind of stuff. That, and when people think of fitness, like, that's what they think of, right? They think of that kind of old school bodybuilding style of training, and that people don't know it's not the only way to train. There's other ways to train. If you don't really enjoy that, there's lots of more interesting athletic ways to train.
And what I find funny about that is how wrong so many people get it as well. There's like, oh, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I read in Arnold Schwarzenegger Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. I'm like, well, you might want to go back and read that again, because like, I'm doing three sets of 8 to get bigger. It's like, well, that 8 reps is not really going to put you into the hypertrophy, so you're not going to get bigger necessarily. You might add a little bit of extra, but you're probably going to get stronger more than you're going to get bigger, or vice versa. Somebody saying, like, I'm doing 20 reps because I'm trying to get stronger. It's like, well, 20 reps, you're more in the endurance range and possibly some hypertrophy. With recent study coming out from Brad Schoenfield, I think somebody that you follow, a lot of research his teams are doing, saying that 20 reps actually does cause some hypertrophy, but you're almost certainly not going to get any strength in the 20 rep range, depending on, the kind of weight you're moving.
Yeah. So more about the effort, and as long as you're getting close to failure, it doesn't really matter too much what the rep range is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, there's a lot of people not doing it right. So, and there's a lot of people not doing it right in both directions. There's a lot of people, like, they come to me and say, I've been working out for years, but I never quite get the look that I want. So, okay, so what are you doing? And as we find out, they haven't quite been doing the right thing. Some people are not doing it nearly enough. They're not lifting nearly enough weight in order to elicit a change, or they're working in the wrong rep ranges, or they're doing the wrong kind of lifts for what they think it's for, or they're doing the right lift, but they're executing it incorrectly. For example, like, so when you do get a lateral raise, the amount of times I see people do this as a lateral raise instead of this with just the deltoids kind of thing, it's nuts. So that's a good example. But also the other way. So we always talk in professional strength and conditioning and with professional athletes about minimum effective dose. So a lot of guys will go, balls to the wall, train as hard as you can. Every training session is going to be absolute crushing. You got to be walking away, barely able to stand up. You can't do that day after day after day for 3 sessions a week, 2 days a week, 2 sessions a day, 3 days a week, and have 1 session a day at the end of the week. Have 1 day off. You cannot do it. You can maintain it maybe for a week. If you're doing periodization, and like, I'm on a meta phase where I've got like a 5 to 6 week meta phase. Week 1, week 2 ramps up, week 3, week 4 maybe, and week 5 might be that kind of a level, but you cannot maintain it for the full meta phase. You can't do it. So.
And I think we've all been guilty of that, right? Reading the bodybuilding magazines and trying to do their workouts with their 50 drop sets and supersets, and then you realize, they're actually juiced to the gills, so they can actually recover from something like this. But you're
100%.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I've got professional athletes that cannot take the PEDs, and nor would I work with one who would. But it's like, you can't recover from that kind of stuff. I think.
Especially if you're a full-time, you have a job and a family and whatever, even less, right?
Yeah, and then the guy from Montreal from TriStars, Firas Zahabi, he got a good example on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he's talking about, if you want to do 50 pull-ups in a week, right? You got five pull-ups. I have 10 pull-ups 5 days a week. You'll get your 50 pull-ups. But if you bang out like 30 pull-ups on Monday and you can't do another pull-up until Thursday and you're still sore and you only get 5, you only got 35 in a week. Whereas you just kind of minimum effective dose, 10 pull-ups a day for 5 days, it's within your capability you'll get your 50 pull-ups at the end of the week, whatever the example he gives is. So along those lines, and that is it, minimum effective dose. So I've recently been quoting a lot on threads, like the new social, the new kind of Twitter.
Yes,
You're talking about like, take your meds, MED, minimum effective dose, because that's where the success is going to come from, because you cannot crush yourself on a weekly basis. Every now and then we want to push the envelope a little bit and really elicit a bit of growth and keep the body guessing, as people used to say. But yeah, you cannot maintain a high level of intensity. People do that as well. So they're either not working intensely enough, like not anywhere near enough, not lifting enough weight, they're lifting in the right rep range, or they're just doing way too much and they're getting exhausted and they can't stay consistent.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Also, I'm big on that for exercise selection, right? Choosing exercises that actually have the most carryover and the most benefit, right? So
yeah,
an example in my style of training, I like to do a lot of sort of like calisthenics, gymnastics type movements, because I find that those actually have a lot of carryover to other movements, right? Like if you take somebody who can do a freestanding handstand push-up, right? That's a pretty impressive feat, right? You take that person and you put them on a bench press. If they've never benched before, they can throw up a decent amount of weight. Go to anyone at the gym who's bench pressing decent and ask them to do a handstand push-up, and there's nothing even close, right? So it's like there's certain exercises that will have a lot of carryover to a wide variety of other aspects in fitness. And for someone like myself, who's not a specialist, I just like training. I like to try a lot of different stuff. So if I'm short on time, I would rather do the exercises that have the most bang for your buck and the most carryover, right?
100%. Yeah, I'm very big on compound movements. I'm very big on what we call functional movements that are strictly not actually functional movements. There's a bit of argument about what a functional movement is. So like a functional movement would be like if I threw a right cross into a what we call tombstone pads, the big pad, and you hit it as hard as you can, like 10 reps. So that would technically be functional training. Like if I do a med ball slam against the wall, it's not strictly functional training, but we kind of lump it in with that.
That's a bit of a polarizing term, yeah, for sure.
It is a little bit, but it's only a technical thing. Everybody kind of knows what you mean to say functional, right?
Yeah,
relative to your actions or motions that are relative to your sport. Really what it is.
So what are some for you then? Like, what are some of the sort of like biggest bang for your buck exercises when it comes to more combat specific, I would say?
100%. So I like to bucket them into sort of like three areas. I like plyometrics. So what I call the holy trinity for combat sport is push-ups, sit-ups, and jump squats. That's it. Like if you go to any martial arts gym anywhere in the world, at any warm-up or any conditioning section that they do in their training, they're all doing at least those three. So and I know from experience, I've built my own martial arts physique. I was karate points fighting and kickboxing national champion in the UK like several times over in teams and individuals as a teenager and as an adult. And I can tell you that's pretty much how I built my physique and my athleticism, from doing exercises like that. It might have been a wide grip push-up or a narrow grip push-up, but it's push-ups. It might have been a squat jump, it might have been a jumping jack, but it's still just basically a jump squat or a use to the chest. It's still the same thing. So there's the plyometrics, which is like the holy trinity. Then I have med balls and landmine. So med ball slam almost always is about rotational force. So I'll take a med ball, have them rack it up here, put the hand behind it like they would if they were loading a punch, and drive it at the wall. Or they would slam it first, catch, and then drive against the wall to mimic a second motion. And then I'll have them drive by the wall and then follow up with an empty hand left hook or something, so they can get the habit of throwing power and then throwing control. The landmine is pretty much the same. I would do like a landmine clean and press kind of thing, where you're like pulling the landmine up, getting your hand underneath it, and then driving up, which is very much like a slip and a cross or slipping up. Very similar kind of movements, and you can overload them to weights where you wouldn't have anything like that in the real sport. So you could do a landmine clean and press with it's hard to gauge how much weight you're actually lifting because the floor is taking some of the weight, but the bar is loaded. A 45-pound bar with a 45-pound plate is a pretty good weight to have to do that exercise with. And I see unbelievable results with just those. So plyometrics, med ball, and landmine would get it. And then I've got more things. I have more areas. There's a group called Boxing Science out of the UK, and they call them Red Zone, where you're training in the 90% percentile of your max heart rate. And there's exercises that are really metabolically challenging. squats and burpees and jumps and med ball slams and skipping. But it's about working in a time period and dropping down and working and dropping and working and dropping. So you can transition from high level to low level, high intensity, low intensity. And that gets the fighter conditioned to what it's like in a fight. Because you'll move around, you're up on your toes, you're working in that sort of like cardio zone, and then you engage. You might have like maximum 2 or 3 seconds of engagement, and then you step back out again. So when you're engaging, you're not really breathing. You're breathing out, but you're not that. So it's more anaerobic, and then you're creating power and force, and then you step out, and then you're dancing around the ring. So we're back into that cardio zone. How do we switch from one energy type to the other? So we're going from sort of, ATP to glycolytic, ATP back to glycolytic, and more endurance back to, aerobic to anaerobic. So any training that switches you between the two to get you ready for a fight. So those are my 3 sort of like buckets, and they cross over too. So I'll put plyometrics and med ball and landmine in functional in the red zone training, or I'll have them just do power training where the low reps and heavy weights, or I'll add the weights to the plyometrics. So they're doing burpees on the med ball, having to do the jump with the med ball. Yeah, any variation of those things, and the combination is limitless, and they all yield results. 100% all yield results.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I've got one. I was going to say, I got one of my clients is training him for weight loss, to bring him down into a different weight category, but we're also he loves strength training. So using strength training to help him do that, increase his muscle mass so he can increase his metabolic rate, so he can keep his calories down. So he actually burns more body fat, bring his weight down. He's currently on a 10-fight win streak with 10 KOs. His power is unbelievable. He actually doesn't knock people out in earlier rounds just so he can get more experience fighting. So he can fight more rounds. You tell him, don't knock him out in the first round so you can get more rounds experience. That's how much more power he's created. So, I don't know how much of that is coming from the S&C training, but it's nice to know that he's got it when he needs it, which is what he comes here for. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love I was sleeping on the landmine stuff for a long time, but recently I've been really enjoying landmine stuff. You can get so creative with that. There's so many interesting exercises. I've been following the stuff from Landmine University. I don't know if you've seen their stuff, but just the power movements are so cool. And for me, it's like, I don't really want to put the effort into getting proficient with, the Olympic lifts. So just kind of like doing that stuff with, the landmine variations. I think you get so much out of that you would get from the Olympic lifts without having to learn the super technical side of it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
It's a lot of that explosive, a lot of that sort of, coil and explode that transfer over so well to athletic endeavors, right? Super important.
Yeah. Rotation, posterior sling, that's all that kind of stuff that doesn't get talked about. Quite a lot, a number of times I see. So I got into it with an S&C guy, very well respected, very successful S&C guy on Instagram. I respect him a lot. He's got world championships in the States. I'm not, we disagree about one thing, that he doesn't think sort of like the standard lifts, like deadlifts and squats and things like that, should be need to be in a program. I agree and disagree. I don't think need to be in a program. It's good to have them in a program. You won't use them at all, and I use them fair amount. But it really is what movement is best for the athlete. But you also got to understand there are certain movements that are critical to the sport that you're doing, that you have to have training to train that thing. Posterior sling is critical for a rotational sport like combat sport, because when you kick, you're rotating your body. When you punch, you're rotating your body. When you slip, you're rotating your body. So all rotation and anti-rotation exercises are critical. You don't have the bulk of your exercises made up of that, you're wasting your time. So I see people, posting videos of their S&C training, and no disrespect to the other trainers, but I see them doing a bench press, and I'm thinking okay, bench press is really good because we're pushing forward. That's a part of the punch. It is, but they were saying, oh yeah, I just hit 340 pounds on my bench press. Like, if you've done a dumbbell bench press with a hip thrust, so now we're hip thrusting and bench pressing at the same time. Now we've got hip extension and arm extension. That's a lot better exercise we could have done with that time.
Seen a lot of guys who can bench. Seen a lot of guys who can bench a lot of weight but couldn't throw a punch to throw their life to save their life.
100%. Yeah. The guy that runs the gym that I work at is a former Canadian Football League with running back, and he can bench like 460 or something. And he's a massive dude. He's a very accomplished wrestler, so I wouldn't want to go one-on-one with him because you'll pin me in a second. But he doesn't want to go one-on-one with me because he doesn't want to risk getting punched in the face. And even though he outweighs me and he's like almost a foot taller than me, he doesn't want me to punch him in the face at all because he's seen how I sling those landmines around. It's like, I don't want to get on the end of that at all. That looks horrifying. And that's where I want to be. That's where I want to be. He doesn't care how much I can bench. He cares how much I can sling that landmine above my head and how quickly it happens too.
It doesn't mean that the bench press is necessarily a bad exercise. It just means that it's not right for everyone. And you have to ask yourself, is that going to give you the most bang for your buck, right? Like, I know very much for me, like I enjoy benching. I mean, who doesn't enjoy benching? I mean, it's kind of a fun exercise. It allows you to put up a lot of weight. But I just
mostly go lift.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
I just noticed for myself, like, every time I go through, I could try and go through a bench program and I, sort of focus more on that and try and get my weight up. It always starts off great. And then just eventually I get to the point where I'm just pissing my shoulders off. And it's like, I have to back off. For whatever reason, it just like, anatomically, it just doesn't really, I don't like it. I do so much better with heavy weighted dips. Right. So I do more of that when I want to do some like more horizontal pressing.
Like, to what end is the bench press? So when you're training in the bench press, you're basically only getting better at the bench press.
Right.
Yeah. You could argue the same with deadlift, but I find that deadlift is, it's a double extension. It's a hip extension, which is critical for combat sports. So I'm always going to include a deadlift. It's not going to be in everybody's program, and it's not going to be all of the time, but almost certainly it's going to be in there. I really like clean and press.
A barbell dead press specifically?
Yeah,
or just
barbell. Yeah.
Okay.
Barbell, well, here's the thing. So a barbell clean and press is a great all total body exercise. It's really explosive. You have to be able to go from 0 to 100. You have to get the coordination. You have to get the power in there. So that's very much like combat sport. Like, I have to coordinate, I have to throw my shot. He has to throw a counter. I have to slip the counter up to come back with my counter. And that's got to be a super powerful shot. So I got to turn the power on. So something like an Olympic lift, the thought process and the control that you have to have in your body and your mind really fits combat sport. So there's a lot of sort of periphery benefits to doing that exercise. But like the explosiveness from the lower body is huge. Like you look at a Yui, who's a Japanese boxer, just fought on the weekend. I think he just became undisputed world champion at another weight division. He's got 4 belts in the 4 other divisions, and he's got this monster of jab. All comes from the acceleration in his legs, because he can just cover massive amounts of ground with his legs. He's so explosive. I always say, I haven't seen it for sure, but I would put money on the fact that he probably does some variation of a clean and press. What I like to do is, like, the clean and press is actually quite a complicated lift for somebody to learn if they haven't used weights before. So with a lot of my athletes, not so much my gem pop, but with my athletes, what I'll have them do is I'll have them learn the trap bar jump deadlift. So I'll have them deadlift with the trap bar, and then I'll have them jump with a loaded with a loaded trap bar, and from the deadlift position. That helps build up that explosivity and the explosiveness in the lower portion, and then get some
having to catch it, right, with the technique,
right, without having to time the catch and have the wrist flexions or wrist extension capabilities and things like that. So yeah, there's little exercises you can put in, and even for the bench press, so there's accessory lifts I have my athletes do. They're going to make their bench press better. So if we find a bench press is an appropriate exercise for them, I'm going to give them accessory lifts to make their bench better, so they get more out of it, and they're less likely to hurt themselves and have shoulder issues and things like that. And cue the proper muscles for the exercise. So like that's a huge in bench press, and people don't think of it that way. Driving your feet into the ground is huge in bench press, and people don't think of it that way. For the longest time, I did my bench press with my feet up on the bench. And like, that's great for core stability. So I have a really, really strong core. My bench sucks. So it's like, what does that tell you, right? So I did an exercise that's really good for the core. It just made my core strong and made my punch suck.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I like dips, especially on the rings, because you have no choice but to engage your lats, because otherwise your arms are all over the place. Like, you have to use those stabilizer muscles to perform the movement. You have no choice, really, right?
100%. Yeah.
So I enjoy that. But what about cardio? Like, that's one thing for fighters. Like, I know for me, like, when I was doing martial arts training, like, I loved the martial arts training side of it. I loved hitting pads, drilling, and all that. But whenever like coaches would tell me like I need to get some runs, I was like, man, I hate running. I hate road work.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and there's kind of like two schools. Like there's a lot of people that think it's important, and you have to do some type of that kind of cardio, whether it's, like swimming, rowing, running, road work, whatnot. And so many champions have, been built off that, right? So it's kind of hard to deny it. But then there's also some people that say like, no, as long as you're drilling and hitting pads, you're building up that sport specific cardio anyways, that's relevant to your sport. I don't know, what's your opinion on that?
So, so there's, I know there's two schools. I think both are appropriate, and it's going to be the thing that's going to suit the athlete the best. So if we go back to what we were saying earlier, like the best nutrition plan is the one you can stick to. The best workout plan is the one that you're happy doing. The same thing for the cardio. If you hate running, you're not going to do it consistently, and you're not going to get the most out of it. Like I've hated running for the longest time. When I was doing military training, I'd run all the time, and now I don't want to run at all. But since I've started doing red zone training, my cardio adaptability has got better. I would routinely run at about 7.5 minutes per kilometer pace, which is pretty slow for a combat sport athlete. Even though I'm heavier, I'm a heavyweight. So I shouldn't be a heavyweight. I'm 5'10". I shouldn't be a heavyweight at 220, but that's where we're at. Now that I've done the cardio adaptability training, that's made my cardio better. So now I can run faster. Yesterday I ran a 5-minute kilometer for 5K. I've run a 4.5. That's made me better. So it kind of just depends on what other kind of training you're doing. And I hate running, so I'm not very consistent at it. So it's not really helping my sport very much. So there's a guy called Aaron Jeffrey who used to train alongside. Obviously, I trained with him, but I trained alongside him at Rybarian in Oakville, in Toronto, or in Ontario. He doesn't do, to the best of my knowledge, he doesn't do any cardio training. It's all pad work and all wrestling and all rolling and all sparring. And that's all he does. And he's in phenomenal shape. He's got an amazing physique. He looks like an Adonis. He always makes weight. He's also a nutritionist, which has a big factor on that. But he very rarely gasses out in a fight. He can just keep going. He doesn't do any of that. I've got another guy who's just the most unbelievable machine I've ever seen in the gym. And he will routinely knock out 12K on a daily basis, and it doesn't faze him at all. So I think it's just really what suits the athlete. From a sort of more lauded perspective, there's a chap called Rick Moylan, who's a strength and conditioning coach in the UK, who's an acquaintance of mine. He trains world champions, like world champion boxers and world champions in other sports, rally drivers, tennis players, all at the world level. He's an extremely sought after S&C coach. He's very selective on who he trains. And he says it himself, like, you do not have to do your cardio. Like, you don't have to do road work. If you like swimming, do swimming. If you like being on the bike, then go on the bike. Like for me, I'll knock out 50K on the bike without even thinking about it. I love being on the bike. I wouldn't run 5K. So it's really just what suits your lifestyle, what suits your program, something you're going to stay consistent at. It's good to get your heart rate elevated. Long, steady state, long period cardio training is good for combat sport athletes because it helps keep their weight down, particularly, especially if you're fighting a weight category where it's not, it's a little bit lower than your actual sort of normal walking around weight. So that's kind of critical as well. But really, in terms of training, do you have to do road work to be a good athlete? No, not at all. Not in my opinion, anyway. And certainly not what I'm seeing, either from my own training, from athletes that I respect, and from world level S&C coaches. It doesn't seem to be necessary.
Yeah, that's good to know. Just do what you can stick to and put a good amount of effort behind, right? That's the most important thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, if you're cutting running out because you don't like running because you don't like the effort, and you're not replacing it with something else like bad work or rolling or whatever it is, then the question is where's your discipline at? Where's your consistency in your training at? If you're not doing it because you don't feel like doing it, that's different from not doing it because you don't need to do it because you feel that time or that that requirement or something else. That's the big difference.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So just kind of to transition a little bit, wanted to talk a little bit more about kind of fatherhood. I think you said this to me one time, sort of that transition going from one kid to 2 kids. So I think it's in my future. Eventually, I'd like to have another kid, and eventually. So I know like going from 0 to 1 was a big transition for me. So I'm kind of looking forward and anticipating like what's that 1 to 2 jump gonna be like. Any thoughts on what that was like for you, and any advice there?
Yeah, 100%. So like leading up to it, like, once we knew we were pregnant with my second daughter, like I was a little concerned, and this was apparently a common concern. It's like, I have so much love for my eldest daughter. How can I possibly have more for another one? But you absolutely do. It just multiplies. It's the same amount of love. So it's both of it. And it just increases the joy that you have with it. I mean, it also increases the difficulty, obviously, because you're doing more. The other things you have in your life, you have to find time for. Now, interests, so like one's gone over here to one sport and one's gone over here to something else. So you got to find ways between yourselves and your family to be able to arrange to have everybody in various places at various times. So that's a challenge. But it's not anywhere near insurmountable. And that links us back to what we were saying earlier about discipline. If you know about time blocking, you know about prioritizing, you understand about planning your day and planning your time, it doesn't become that much of an issue. We've got a Post-it note on the fridge right now. I've gone through my week. I know where my clients are, and as my clients change, I can update it on a Post-it note. We've got a shared calendar between my wife and I. We know who's going to be where or when, who's taking whom or what time, and sometimes we'll just double check before it happens, and everyone gets where they need to go. I've never missed a sporting event. I've never missed a school like play or performance. I've never missed, a championship. I've never missed a track and field day. You make it happen. You have that discipline. You make it happen. If you have that discipline from the other things you do outside in your life, 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, doesn't make any difference. I have a former colleague of mine who has very serious autoimmune disease. Realistically, many people in that situation wouldn't even be able to have kids. She's got 3. She's also like a VP level in a consumer goods company. And she has these 3 wonderful kids, and they're all very close to each other in age. And she's like pulled from left to right. Her husband's an entrepreneur, runs his own place. He's in the fitness industry as well. And she just manages because she knows how to manage her time. She's a VP in a consumer goods company, which is a very high intensity, very high pressure industry. You just learn how to manage it. As daunting as it seems at the outset, it's actually dealing with it. It's just, again, when you put yourself in those situations, you just find ways to deal. And the people who can't deal with it, the people that have never tested themselves in other things.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's maybe that's the common theme here of this podcast, is just how important time management is, and how that's kind of the root of everything. Everything is based off that, because if you can't figure your time out, if you can't manage your time, you're not going to do anything important, right?
It's interesting. Everything we're talking about is like rooted in fitness. And I think fitness is a word that people kind of like mistake to mean like physical training. It's not. Like when you say somebody, like we talk about, a polarizing character like Donald Trump, you would ask the question, is he fit to be president? And I'm talking about, is he, does he work out? Which I believe he does. I think he's very much against it. We're not saying like, is he physically fit to be president? You're saying, is he morally, ethically, politically, whatever the other measures you want to put on? Is he fit to be president? That's the question. So fitness is really, are you appropriately prepared for what it is that you're going to go in for? So like, are you fit to be a parent of 2? Like, can you manage your time? Can you figure out, do you have a good relationship with your spouse? Do are you a good parent to the existing kid that you've got? Things like that. Do you find time? Have you missed school plays and missed events and things like that? Are you selfish with your time? Like, if so, you're maybe not fit, to be to be a parent of a second kid, maybe. In the same way, if you want to run a triathlon and you haven't picked up a bike in 20 years, you're not fit for a triathlon. Yeah, that's not fitness, right? So we don't think of, we always think of fitness in terms of physical, but it's more than that. And it's the discipline from the training that you get is going to make you fit for other things in your life. So I would say, if there's a theme to the things we're talking about, is that fitness in the broader sense, in the holistic sense. Like, was I fit to be an entrepreneur? Was I fit to leave my corporate job and take a 2/3 pay cut and run my own business? So, was I fit to be by my wife's bedside? She's going through the chemotherapy. Oh, I was fit for that. I was fit to run my own business. Here I am 4 years later. I'm still running it. When it's successful, my schedule is full. It's awesome. It's good.
Yeah, I appreciate your insight, Jay. I think that's a good way to wrap this up nicely. So why don't you tell people where they can get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to follow me, I'm most active on Instagram. That's the best way to see the kind of things that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis and get some of my insights and knowledge. So that's Open Cross Fitness. Hook and Cross Fitness, all one word, on Instagram, also on Threads, and also on YouTube. And on YouTube, you'll also find some building my YouTube channels. There's not a huge amount of content on there, but there's workouts on there. There's a sandbag workout. There's boxing workouts. There's hand wrap tutorials for combat athletes that need to wrap their hands. So you can go there as well. Our website's hookandcross.com. You can get a little idea about what my packages look like and kind of services we offer. So yeah, that's the best way.
That's awesome, Jay. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Lots of great insight here. And
hey, thanks for having me. And it's good to chat with you again. Long time.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. Let's not do that again. We'll talk again sometime soon.
Yes, I like the idea of that. All right, chat soon. All right. See ya.